Hey guys, this is Shelby with the Rogers Public Library. So this week for Full Steam Ahead, I want to talk to you guys about printing, right? So printing is like a really broad term that just means using something to form an impression, right? So if you think about, have you ever seen like pictures of really old cave drawings, like from tens of thousands of years ago, where there's like a handprint on the wall? Those are prints, right? You're making an impression of your hand, right? And you know it's a cool example because for a really long time printing is associated with art, right? So you get cave printings like with hands and stuff, and then also kind of the earliest artistic printing we might think about was in China where people use wood blocks, right, to make patterns and shapes and art on fabric. And the kind of printing that we're more familiar with now, printing words and letters, is a lot newer. So I guess printing text is from the 9th century AD, right, in China. And if you know anything about Chinese, they don't use the Latin alphabet, they use the Chinese alphabet, right? And where the Latin alphabet has letters, right, so we have letters like P and R and I. The Chinese alphabet has logograms. And logograms are like one symbol that stands for a whole word. So because of that, because they have a specific letter for every word in the language, or at least most of them, right? There's like thousands and thousands of characters that you have to use to be able to print stuff in Chinese. And so they, at first, right, they would carve whole pages of text, right? So you would have a page of text just for one page of a book, but you could use that to make a bunch of different pages of or you could use that to make a bunch of different copies of a book, but you would have to make it a new wood block for every single page. And then, right, and that's just because of how Chinese works. Even though there were, right, like people thought of movable types, which is what we use now in China and in Korea, but they just weren't useful because of how their alphabets work, right? And then you get this guy. You might have heard of him, Johann Gutenberg, right? So he was a guy who makes gold, right? A goldsmith in Germany, and because he was really familiar with working with metals, because he was interested in printing, he decided, well, maybe I can make a printing machine using metals, right? So he came up with this metal printing press that you see right here that has movable type, right? So instead of printing whole words or whole pages of text at once, or instead of using metal to make a whole page of text that you can use to print, he just made the individual letters, right? So if you have a letter A, you can use it in any letter in any order, right? So you can use the letters A, like if you had B, B, and Y, you could use that to spell baby. You could also use it to spell Abby, or you could use it to spell Yab or Ibab, right? There's not a specific order. You can use the letters in any order, which is kind of cool, and which works really well with the Latin alphabet that we use, and it works really well with other alphabets that are like like Latin alphabet, like the Greek alphabet and the Cyrillic alphabet and the Arabic alphabet, right? Those are the big ones. Yeah, and that so a lot of times people refer to Gutenberg as like the father of printing because when he made movable type, it caught on, whereas it hadn't really caught on when people made it before, right? It kind of just fell flat. People kept doing things the old way. Yeah. Yeah, and then just one other thing to note is that there's different types of printing, and I don't mean like art printing or like printing words and stuff. So the main two types are called intaglio and relief. And what a relief is where you have a raised surface, right? So like this, if you look at this little stamp, or if you look at this little stamp, right? There's a raised surface and there's like gaps in between that you use to make the picture. And the raised surface is what comes in contact with paper, and which actually makes the print, right? And then there's something called intaglio, which is you have to have like specialized equipment and use like metal plates and stuff. But you like cover the whole thing with ink, and then you take the ink off of the tall parts. So like if I did this one, which is supposed to be an S, and there was just ink on the inside of this, but not on the raised surface, then that would be intaglio. And there's also something called lithograph, which like you use acid and stuff to make marks in a stone. And then you can use this stone to print stuff, and that's a lot newer. But right, it's chemical. It's like a whole chemical process as opposed to just making these guys, right? Which is the craft that we have today. Is these little stamps made out of clay, right? So yeah, right. So these are like, I guess you can use them to print ink, but I kind of thought of them, and I've been using them to like stamp with wax, right? Which is a little bit, right? It's a little bit more difficult because you have to heat the wax up and get it melted, which is what's going on over here. But I just have some polymer clay, right? So this is Shelby brand. If it says oven baked clay, it's good, right? Basically, we're gonna have some clay and some other stuff for you guys to pick up so you make your own stamps. Right now, I'm just kneading it to get it soft. Okay, so it's kind of soft, and I'm gonna roll it into a ball. And I'm gonna flatten it. Okay. So now it's basically, I guess you can think like a blank slate, right? That we can carve stuff onto to make our stamp, right? So I'm going to do an R for Rogers. So we have an R. I don't know how you can see it. Now I'm just going to press down like this, right? Oh no, that was too much. Okay. I want to press down a little bit so that the surface is flat, but not too much like I did so that you can't really see the letter anymore, right? Because if the surface is flat, it's going to be, or if the raised surface is flat, then it's going to be easier to see the finished work. So I'll press down a little bit now, right? Now you can still see the letter, and hopefully this part is all flush, right? So now that's the easy part. The next part you need a grown-up's help to do. And what you'll do is you'll bake your stamp in the oven, 275 for 15 minutes, and then it ends up super duper hard, like these guys, right? This is an S, this is a little ducky, and this is a different S, right? Whereas this one, it's sunken in, this S is raised, but they're both still relief, right? Okay, I think this is going to be good to use, right? So I've had my wax sitting in a bowl of hot water, just so that it gets nice and melty and I can pour it on the page. Okay. Now I'm going to let it cool for a second. Put my rubber ducky on there. Awesome. Yeah, that one turned out really well. I'll do another one with one of these S's. Maybe I won't. Okay. Well, that needs to melt a little bit more before I can do any more. But yeah, this little rubber duck stamp turned out super well. See it like that, right? You can definitely see the duck. So this is basically just for stealing letters, right? If you want to send old-fashioned pen and paper letters to people, or if you just want to make your you can put it on artwork and stuff. If you want to make it a little bit more cool, right? You can do your initials and stuff. As for heating up the wax, right? So I think the easiest and safest way to do it is to use a candle warmer like this. You shouldn't touch it, right? Because it's too hot for you to do that. But it doesn't get super hot, but it will melt the wax if you leave a candle on there for long enough. But I boiled some water and put it in a bowl because it's just a little bit faster. Yeah, but that's what we have for you guys this week. I hope you have fun. I'll see you next time.